So all my friends are having kids. The midweek beers at Zeki's are giving way to Saturday afternoon house calls. And I dig it. I really do. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, just wait. It will. And witnessing your friends become completely selfless validates why you became friends with them in the first place. All of my siblings have multiple kids too. So yeah, I think about my future offspring a lot these days. There's so much that I look forward to sharing with them, not the least of which is my love of music. A person's music biography is like a baseball game. We all have played, so it's a shared experience, yet no two games are carbon copies of each other. I think the same goes for music. We all have a timeline, and there are bands or albums that many of us come to, but ultimately no two experiences are the same. So this show typically focuses on one moment when a piece of music becomes a part of who we are, but today, author Lewis Buzbee shares his music biography in 4 vignettes, covering his childhood and taking us all the way up to his daughter falling in love with music. It turns out hearing about a person's life through the lens of music is a pretty fun and accessible way to get to know a stranger. A little bit more about Lewis. He's the author of 3 novels for younger readers: The Haunting of Charles Dickens, Steinbeck's Ghost, and Bridge of Time. His most recent book for adults is The Yellow Lighted Bookshop. He teaches in the MFA program in writing at the University of San Francisco. And just a side note, the song he's listened to more than any other is Come Together by the Beatles. Hope you enjoy the show. And again, if you like what you hear, just subscribe so you can get every new episode automatically. All right, here's Lewis Buzbee.
The surprise of music. 4th grade, 1966. You Didn't Have to Be So Nice, The Lovin' Spoonful, Daydream. Music has always surprised me. I think this is because I grew up in a radio family at a time when radio still ruled music. Music came to me not through any considered, planned, or programmed algorithm. Music simply arrived over the airwaves, randomly, a bit of magic. There were radios everywhere in my 4th grade life, and they were all AM. I had my own pocket-sized transistor with its mono earbud, a battery-operated tabletop set in the garage for both music and baseball games, a console stereo in the living room, but without an FM antenna, which was needed back then to receive what few stations existed. And of course, the radio in the car, KLIV, 1590 on the dial, all bubblegum all the time. On Saturday afternoons, my family would sit out on our front porch and listen to the Grand Ole Opry, live from Nashville, my dad's music. In 4th grade, I knew who the Beatles were, had seen them perform for the first time on Ed Sullivan 2 years earlier, but preferred Herman's Hermits or Peter and Gordon, the sappier side of the British invasion. I did own several LPs, which I played on a white and blue plastic General Electric record player shaped like a small suitcase. And I watched groups on TV shows, too. Ed Sullivan, American Bandstand, Hootenanny Shindig. But it was radio that called to me most urgently. In 2nd grade, my best friend Jim Bryant and I decided to ride our bikes across San Jose to the KLIV studios, where we would meet Herman's Hermits when they stopped by to perform, which they seemed to do several times a day. That's how real radio seemed. The summer before 4th grade, I drove to San Diego with my mother and father to watch my brother graduate from Marine boot camp. My brother had already volunteered to go out to Vietnam. In order, he wrote in a letter home, to save my little brother from being killed by gooks. I had always admired my brother as only a little brother can, heroically, but I did not want him to go to Vietnam or to kill anyone on my behalf. I was only 9, but I knew better. We drove all around San Diego that trip, and as always, I sat in the back seat with that 1 AM speaker right by my ear. It was a miserably hot summer, and whether smog was so much worse back then or my memory is clouded by nostalgia, I remember the sky as a deep shade of pink. We were under some kind of cloud, that is certain. Life for me was about to get more troubling with my brother flying off into the great unknown. All that weekend, it seemed, I heard nothing on the San Diego AM station but the Lovin' Spoonful. Summer in the City was the big hit, of course, and a fitting one. In our air-conditioned free car, I listened to the song's traffic-blaring background while we sat stalled in traffic. But there was also Daydream and Do You Believe in Magic and You Didn't Have to Be So Nice. When I listened to You Didn't Have to Be So Nice, I thought of Amy Burgraff back in San Jose, a girl who I knew was not thinking about me. Something in the song soothed me, pulled me away from the tensions that were building up in the car, in my family, in the world. Turn it up, I called from the back seat. At the end of the trip, my brother is shipping out to a Hawk missile school in preparation for shipping out to Vietnam. We stopped by the Marine base's PX, post-exchange, and my brother bought Daydream for me. For years, I listened to that album, surprised and grateful that this music had fallen into my lap. And today, when I hear You Didn't Have to Be So Nice, I'm immediately returned to the back seat of our old Plymouth, where I'm singing along to the radio, thinking of Amy Burgraff and doing my best to imagine that the world can keep from changing. 8th grade, 1971, Susie Q, Creedence Clearwater Revival. In my 7th grade, I truly discovered the Beatles, that is, their mature albums, Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album, and most especially Abbey Road. Nothing was ever really the same for me after this, musically or otherwise. Again, the surprise came flying in out of the blue. Before first period each morning, 2 or 3 songs, chosen by the students, played over the PA system in the hallways, and one morning Come Together came blaring out. This was a sound so startling, I actually stopped dead in my tracks and turned to Rich Davis. What is that noise? By the end of the year, I was taking bass lessons and had formed a band with Rich and Keith Epstein. I had also connived my parents into getting me my own stereo, one with a working FM tuner. It didn't take long to discover that FM radio, which was flourishing by this time, was a completely different beast than AM. FM carried more music than I ever knew existed or could even imagine might exist. It would be years before we got an FM tuner in our car, and so my memories of FM are mostly night memories, sitting in the dark in my bedroom, forestalling sleep, trying to hear one more track, one more band I'd never heard before, one more album I simply had to have. We forget it now, but back then, Creedence Clearwater Revival owned the music scene in the United States. They were huge, and I was under their spell. I spent months pining for the beige suede cowboy boots they all wore, finally got them. And my first concert was Creedence at the Oakland Coliseum. I heard Creedence on AM, all their singles, but I also heard them on the local FM stations, KSJO and KOME, and it was the long tracks these stations played, like the 8-minute version of Susie Q, that made me fall in love with them. My room was a shrine to music. Every square inch of wall and ceiling was covered, literally so, with music posters, many of them black light. I had also created a blacklight curtain by dipping pieces of twine in day-glow paints and tacking each to the ceiling. Spooky and dark, that was the look I was after, and with my room lit up like this, Susie Q fit the mood. I would play along on my bass, no longer a child of San Jose's suburbs, but a devilish blues musician who'd just crawled out of the swamp. I no longer wanted the world to stay the same. I'd come to understand that it couldn't. But I wanted to change myself too, and FM radio helped me understand that, helped forge who I would become, all for free and completely by chance. I just had to keep listening. Summer after my senior year of high school, 1975, Dr. Wu, Steely Dan, from Katy lied. The surprise of music follows other avenues, too. Because I'd heard the Beatles, I'd started bass lessons, which led me to John Sharkey, guitar teacher extraordinaire. One day, about a year into my lessons, Sharkey insisted I find a copy of Can't Buy a Thrill by this new group, Steely Dan. I was all blues and hard rock still, and this pop-based record left me flat for quite a while. But I looked up to Sharkey so much, I persevered in listening to it, determined to see in Steely Dan what he did. It took a while, but I did get it, and in a big way. All through high school, Steely Dan grew on me, the caustic wit of their lyrics and the sophistication of their musicians and the recordings, all the usual explanations and defenses. But in the summer between high school and college, I heard in Steely Dan some quality that was new to me, one that told me much about myself. All that summer, I propped my speakers in my bedroom window and sat out in the sun and listened to Katy Lied over and over. I was excited for college and both sad and glad to be leaving high school and my home, and Becker and Fagan gave me the words and tones to feel all this in a new way. I was on the other side of no tomorrow, Fagan sang in Dr. Wu, and I knew that I had already spent the last piastre I could borrow. Katy Lied spoke of a far-off New York and Biscayne Bay, all coated with a worldly wise fatigue I had not earned but yearned for. This time I felt deep in my bones the last of the golden summers, and whatever waited for me in the world would be, well, that's the point. I had no idea what waited for me. Katy Lied helped me to imagine that I had grown tired of my little world and gave me a direction to point myself where Cuban gentlemen sleep all day. I sat in the backyard and sang along and rued the past and dreamed of the unknown, and every word we sang I knew was true. Today, 2011, Undercover Martin, Two-Door Cinema Club, Tourist History. It's been 45 years since I first heard The Lovin' Spoonful, and oh, all the music since. I like to think I'm learned in music and that I've investigated and enjoyed every stripe imaginable, from classical to jazz to world to, well, everything. But I'm happy to report that the surprise of music continues, often from unexpected quarters. My daughter Maddie is 13 and has great taste in music. She may have picked up something of this from me and her mom. We at least had music playing all the time. When she was very small, we all listened to both kid and adult music, with an emphasis on the Beatles. Maddie and I have driven to school together every morning since pre-K, and the radio has always been turned on. First my stations, then Radio Disney for her, with the stations changing as Maddie grew. When she was 9, I took her to see Hannah Montana at the Oakland Coliseum, where I first saw Creedence. We had front row seats and a backstage pass, a crowning moment in my dad life. Maddie's tastes have changed, of course, as they are supposed to, and we've tried to let her have free rein as we're supposed to. But her music hasn't been shaped through broadcast radio as mine was. Broadcast radio rarely offers that kind of surprise any longer. But through her friends and through her computer, on Pandora and other sites, she's left herself open to the possibility of surprise. This year, Maddie and I started to attend what she refers to as real concerts. First was Florence and the Machine at the Berkeley Greek, a great venue and a thumpingly good show. Then last month, I took Maddie and her friend Alex to San Francisco's Warfield Theater, Two-Door Cinema Club, Group Love, and The Lonely Forest. Maddie made a mixed CD of these bands a few weeks before the show, and I grooved along with and without her as I toddled errantly around town. I loved the CD, and at the show I was blown away by all the groups, especially Two-Door Cinema Club, a tight but kick-ass band that's a blend of the Police's ska rock and Squeeze's smarts and harmonies, with something brand new thrown in. Maddie first found out about Two-Door Cinema Club because she was offered a free song on iTunes. She's as hungry for music as I ever was and will take anything that comes her way. A free Starbucks MP3 card, Pandora selections that rise up mathematically, groups she likes because of the name, an article in NME, etc. Hungry, that's the only word for it. And now, here I am, Maddie turning me onto her tunes. Seriously, I couldn't be happier. Oh, I'm thrilled that she'll suddenly sing along to some old Neil Young tune that comes on the radio. But I'm more thrilled when she finds her own music, especially that which surprises her. I'm glad she lives in a world that still allows such surprises. At the Warfield, Alex and Maddie are down in the pit right up against the stage. Do you remember the first time your ears were assaulted by that sonic storm? I'm sitting at the back of the first level on a stool that seems to have been provided for such geezers as myself, and damn it, I'm actually sipping a gin and tonic. But I'm having a blast. I'm singing right along, and frankly, I'm rocking out. Without a doubt, I am the oldest person here, but who cares? After Maddie cruises by to check in between sets, the guy behind me taps me on the shoulder, wants to know if I'm here to expose my daughter to this music. No, I tell him, she's the one who brought me here. The guy shakes my hand, oddly enough, as if I've made some big sacrifice. I can hardly see Maddie and Alex from here, but I don't need to. I can imagine what Maddie is thinking, feeling. I remember it. The joy of sudden music offered up by the universe, an enormous and necessary surprise.
For all things Musical Yearbook, check out themusicalyearbook.com. And if you really like this podcast, subscribe to it right now. Do it. It'd be fantastic. And you'll get all the new episodes right away. Musical Yearbook is produced by BAMM.TV. Check out BAMM.TV for hundreds of videos by incredible indie artists. We have episodic content on there. We have documentary shorts. And as always, just head over to Facebook and type in BAMM.TV and follow. Have a good one.